If I had that when I was a young child, oh, the things I would have done.
You have to leave. No way, I scared him off.
I have to tell you that I was hypnotized with the visual style of this movie, and I want to read something that you said. We are trying to show that hand-drawn can still do something that CGI can't, and I want to thank you for preserving this. What was the challenge?
The one thing that hand-drawn animation we feel can do is bring a level of expressiveness that maybe is harder for CG to do. All the crew here that work on Wolfwalkers, a lot of them are sculptors or illustrators or painters. They draw and they can bring so much of their hand-drawn art to Wolfwalkers that I think it's just making a space to allow that to happen is what we were trying to do. Encouraging everyone to be an artist.
I loved the movie so much, and I want to ask you, what is the most impressive lesson that you learned from your characters?
Robyn goes through a journey throughout the film, and she definitely is trying to find herself and find where she fits in, and finding Mebh is such a big help. And it does show the importance of friendship, and I think that's definitely one of the key messages throughout it all.
I think definitely because Mebh has grown up and is from the forest, I think she really kind of represents, I suppose, respecting our nature and respecting our wildlife.
You could have told the story from anywhere, and you chose these two characters, these female characters that I love, and I identified with them, and I want to have some characteristics from them. So why?
I think first of all you have to draw on the characteristics that I think one thing that I realized, I was always a little bit worried that Tomm myself, as two middle-aged men, would not be able to tell the story of two young girls. But I think children are children, regardless of gender, and like where there might be specifics, really, like if the things I can remember as a kid, I think even it would be the same for a woman to remember being a little girl, wanting to have adventures, wanting to play, wanting to have fun. These are universal things that you would aspire to be, like to be brave, to be courageous, to be more wild and more expressive. Like these are common characteristics, really.
When we hit upon the idea of making Robyn a boy, it was quite interesting because the personality of the character we had in mind didn't change. But when the gender changed, the things that she was up against in her society became more difficult. So it was quite interesting for us because we had this character in mind who was gentle, who loved the animals, but wanted to prove themselves as a hunter and all this stuff. And when we made that person a girl, the story made sense because society that she was facing was telling her she couldn't do these things. And so actually, the character is very similar, but the situation that they're in is very different when it's a female,
What tips can you tell me from voicing an animated character?
It's definitely more challenging than doing maybe a physical role or a live action film because you don't have the costume just to switch into character like that. You're doing it all through your voice. Like, you really learn the importance of portraying all of these emotions using not your face, not physically, just your voice.
Yeah, and I suppose limiting your movement as well because they can pick up all the sounds. So yeah, limiting your hands and your feet as well.
There was a specific language that I realized after this movie, which is the shape language.
In our animation college, we had this fantastic course as part of the syllabus, which was visual language. It was really eye-opening for me, maybe for you too, Tomm, but it just taught about how we inherently will see certain objects or certain shapes and the characteristics that we ascribe to them. Like pointy objects will seem more aggressive and rounded objects will seem more friendly. And the whole visual language is there, and it's just a matter of understanding it. And we wanted to push these two worlds as far apart as possible so that the town became like a cage for Robyn and was really quite oppressive and quite austere and wouldn't allow her to really show her true energy. And conversely, the forest would be so full of life and so sketchy and so energetic and also so friendly. So really it is like a visual language that goes through the whole film, but it has to work on a subconscious level. It has to work not too obviously, not too shoved down your throat,
I want to know what was your first impression when you got to see the type of animation, the style, and that you were going to be part of it?
Yeah, well, I did see Song of the Sea and Secret of Kells before I think even before I auditioned. But I suppose one of the first impressions of Wolfwalkers would have been watching the storyboards, which were the very brief sketches that weren't yet coloured in or anything. But they really did help actually for getting into character. So that would have been one of my first impressions of it.
And I think like seeing the storyboards and then seeing the final thing that looks so beautiful and everything about it looks incredible. To see that transformation and to know that you've been a part of it, you just feel so lucky and it just looks incredible.
I love animation, but it could be really expensive. That could challenge and that could scare and that could limit a lot of new creators that want to do something, that want to show their talent, but they're scared. So what would you recommend?
I think that it's never been easier to get your stuff out there. I mean, a feature is still a huge undertaking, but I think young people now have the ability to learn from each other online. That now some of the young people in the studio, they're in contact with the best artists around the world and they learn from each other. And there's such an open community online there. People share their drawings and everything. So I think animation has become more accessible. When Ross and I were young, we joined a group called Young Irish Filmmakers, and that was the only place that had the equipment that allowed us to experiment with animation. But now kids can use their phone, like an app on their iPhone or something, to make a stop motion animation. So it doesn't have to be expensive. And
yeah, and then if you want to keep on progressing, you can end up like getting a program like Blender, which is open source, it's free, and inside Blender, if you know everything about it, you can do whatever you want. And
if I had that equipment when I was a kid, I would have been so excited, because you can just make a cartoon now. Like with a laptop, everybody can make a cartoon. So don't be intimidated.
Sounding like an old fogey now. If I had that when I was a young child, oh, the things I would have done.
This movie, it is already becoming something huge. It's getting a lot of nominations and it's gonna win a lot of prizes, I know. What other movies in your life have made you feel like anything is possible? And talking about animated movies that have inspired you.
Yeah, well, growing up, I've always watched, the Disney princess films, and I loved Tangled especially. I think that was my favorite Disney princess, but I love Mulan as well. She would have been one of my favorites.
Yeah, I mean, I love an animation. I think one of my favorites is probably, it's Big Hero 6. I think that's a really nice story that takes you on a bit of a roller coaster. I know I was crying at one point, I was laughing at one point, but yeah.
I am loving your energy and all the enthusiasm that you are giving to me during this interview. What tips or what lessons can you give to young audiences or to old audiences, why not, about your approach in this industry and the animated movie and the whole cinema industry?
I think for me, I love acting, and acting is what I want to continue doing. And I think you have to have a real passion for it. And I think if you want to do it, go for it, because it's such an amazing thing.
Yeah, for me, it's always been something that I've really enjoyed, and I know a lot of other people would really enjoy it too. So it's really fun to try it out.
Well, thank you, Ross and Tom. Thank you for this movie.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Honor. It was a pleasure to be here, and I wish you the best. And I hope we meet again sometime in the future with another project for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.